lovers, and welcome. I want to start off by saying I am so blessed to be in a position to suggest tips and tools and even products that can help you lead a tantric life of liberation and expansion. And one of my absolute favorite places to purchase spiritual and sexy items is Wands. Wands.com, spelled Wands. Wands sells, you guessed it, crystal pleasure wands, along with so much more, including yoni eggs, free bleed blankets, other amazing products for yoni steaming. I've been using these products and products similar to them for the better part of a decade, and they have been incredible allies in my journey of sexual healing and expanding my orgasmic potential. And I'm so grateful to be friends with the owner, Courtney. She's amazing. She has so generously provided us all with a discount code for 15% off, and that code is Leola. Leola. You can use it on their website, www.wands.com. Again, the code is Leola, Leola, for 15% off. I'll also make sure that this is linked in the show notes. So thank you for listening, and you're welcome for the inevitable pleasure and healing that is coming your way with these products. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome to Talk Tantra to Me. It is such an honor to be holding space for this divine knowledge to make its way into your ears and lifestyle. Today, I get to introduce you guys to a woman that is so inspiring and a good friend of mine, someone who I've had the honor of co-creating with and just dancing with in this life. And I'm really excited to introduce Samantha Charles, or Sam, as she's affectionately known. She is a feminine expression and women's empowerment coach. Thanks for being here, Sam. Depending on where you're listening, we've actually decided to put this on both of our podcasts. So Sam has a podcast called Grow As We Go. And so you might be listening there. You might be listening here on Talk Tantra to Me. But hey, Sam, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for setting this up and having me here and having you here wherever they're listening from.
Yeah, we're co-hosting this. Cool. And for your listeners, I'll share just a little bit about me, I
Yeah.
suppose. Is that good? Yeah. So my name is Leola. I'm a sacred intimacy mentor and muse. I've studied under the lineages of Tantra and sacred sexuality. And my work really revolves around helping people reclaim their life force energy, their sexual energy, and something that is, what Sam and I have decided to use this time and space for is to talk about, shame and limiting beliefs and past trauma. And so a lot of my work has to do with helping people release that so that they can come into living a tantric life, which is one that is based on expansion and liberation. And it's hard to be expansive or liberated if you're carrying around a lot of shame, which is really projected on us from young age, especially as women.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe we can start by just sharing a little bit of our journeys with that. Or maybe let's start by telling people a little bit more about how we met so they can get that clarity. I actually don't know when I first met you. It's
I
just like I feel like I kept seeing you around places
yeah, just a
and through
little
Bertini as
butterfly.
well. And Bertini's been on my podcast too, but
Yeah, I talk about Bertini a lot.
everybody knows she's famous.
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, I think I listened to your podcast a few years ago, like started just dabbling in that. And we went to one of your um like it's like a BDSM education sort of party. It wasn't a play party, it was like something else. Um,
Yeah, like a play experience, I think is what we were calling them.
yeah,
It was at
yeah.
Lydia's house. Is that?
hmm
Oh, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I was talking to Bertini later. I think it was like around the time that you and Andrew like were first getting together or meeting or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. But that was like my first time meeting you in person. And
Uh-huh.
then from there, we were in ALA together, the first, that of
Oh, that's
training,
right. The
level
level
one.
one.
Yeah. A lifetime ago. Um, And then yeah, I think just like through Bertini and like seeing you online and like talking back and forth on Instagram. Um, and then I had shared about the yoni casting, and I remember you were like, "Oh, that's so cool! Like, I want to do it." And I was like, "Well, do you want to collaborate on something? That'd be fun." And
Yeah,
you're like, "Yeah." And then it just like rolled down the
happened.
snow. Yeah.
Yeah. So last year, mid year, so about 7 or 8 months ago, we did a workshop together of like casting our pussies. So pussies out, making art with a bunch of ladies. I don't know. How would you describe it? Because I feel like that's your baby, really. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'll come in and like add some Tantra flavor. But the casting is really the main course. And so I'd love to hear more about how you started that. Like, like, I know that your listeners probably have a little bit of a better idea, but just maybe a
Yeah.
synopsis for mine.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's see. I learned about this even being like an option in life. This girl that I was following on Instagram, she actually is in Australia and she does like body castings. Like women will get like their pregnant bellies, or she would do just like different castings, like full body, half body. And then she also did like a yoni casting ceremony. And I was like, man, that's really cool. Like, I wish somebody here did that.
Yeah.
And then I saw that she has like a DIY kit. And so I was like, I'm ordering that and I'm going to do it. And then I ordered it, and it was interesting because it like sat in my garage for like months. And then
Mm.
I went through a separation, and it it's just, the timing of it all. And I'm like, man, I really like it would pop in my brain every now and then, like, oh, I want to do that. And just the time of it. But eventually found the time, and it's really, it reminds me, I tell this story a lot. It reminds me of whenever I first did boudoir photos for the first time. Like the original intent was like for my husband at the time. Um,
Mm.
and with the yoni casting, the original intent was like just to have the the actual product, the end
Yeah, it was
result.
goal oriented.
Very, yeah. And I didn't think that the process of it, and the same thing with like the boudoir photos and like that experience, like it ended up being so much more for me than I originally thought it could be. Um, and like the instructions that she gave whenever you're doing it at home yourself, it was very much about like make it a ritual, make it a ceremony, like light some candles and like play some music and ask your yoni permission. Like if she's okay to do that. And even that was like such a novel concept to me at the time. Um, and it was really, really cool. And then the process of it and then getting it, and I was like, whoa, like it's really detailed.
Yeah.
And to be able to see it like in your face, like it's one thing to like look in the mirror or like crouch hunch over and like see as much as you can, but it's like from a different angle, and really allowed me to appreciate her and see her in a different light.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so then I shared about it, and you were like, whoa. And I was like, everybody needs this.
Yeah, everybody needs a golden, like plaster version of their pussy. It's just like you gotta have it. Um, which is interesting because, growing up, like I tell this, Andrew and I kind of joke about this story of like when I was like young, my pussy was like very together. And I remember when it started to open and I was like, something is wrong. Like the lips when I was young were like very close together. And then they started to like open. And I like hated it. I was like, this is so ugly. Like this
Oh.
blooming flower, this like rose. I'm like, it's so bad. Like it's not what it looks like in the porn and the things that I'm seeing on the internet. And so, and like to think like that was really only like 15 years ago or something. And like to now be in a place where I'm like, I want to display my splayed out pussy on my altar in my house. It's such a trip. It's such a trip.
Yeah, a transformation for sure, and a journey, and yeah, just like you were saying too, like the judgment that came out, like, oh, it's ugly, it doesn't look the way it's supposed to, quote unquote. And I think that that's a huge reason why I'm going down this path, and why you're in this work, and like that level of body shame that women experience, and then the way that that like affects your whole life in a lot of
Yeah.
different areas.
Yeah, it can be limiting. I mean, I know that I've gone home from like a date early because like I didn't shave or because, like I thought that like, oh, I might smell like I wanted to feel really good down there and I just didn't. And so like it kept me from doing lots of things that I wanted to do or would have liked to do. And it's been like years of transformation. I can't even say that it was like overnight. It's interesting though that you said that um you kept it in the garage for like months because I had a similar experience. My first time I got a pleasure wand, I got an obsidian pleasure wand, and I like it just sat on my desk for months and I didn't touch it. And it was like when it was time, but it's like it's almost like some of these big moments of healing or transformation and the physical objects that represent them need to sit in the space and like I don't know what they're doing, creating some kind of vortex and like merging with me energetically before it's
Yeah.
I don't know. Um
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting to think about too, because I've reflected on that a little bit too, because I was so excited when I bought it, and then I got it in and I was like, oh, and it's really, kind of an interesting, like, what do they say? Like, parallel with like your life, that like how you do one thing is how you do everything teaching. And
yeah.
there's like, I wanted it to be perfect, and I
Uh-huh.
wanted it to like set up the time and like da da da. And creating time for myself historically has been like a challenge. And like setting up just the container of it because I knew it was going to be a process. It was like a new experience. I'd have to learn. Like it was kind of a lot
Gonna
of
be messy a
things.
little bit.
Yeah. But there was that piece of it for me. And I think too with women who have joined the different workshops, like the one that we did and the couple that I've done um, here in the Houston area, um, it's like it's not for everybody. And I think that there's even just saying that feels like, oh, there might be a level of shame there, like, oh, it's not for you, you're not ready yet. And that's not at all what I mean by it. It's like just that journey takes a lot of time. And like either you can be ready for it or you're not. And if you're not, there may come a time and there may not. Like it may be a different journey for you. Um, but I think like releasing whatever shame around that and it not being the timing of things is always the way it's meant to be.
Yeah, divine timing. What do you think like you did to get to the point where you were quote unquote ready or it was like for you?
Yeah. Well, I have a really interesting like background. I feel like I've always been very open about sex and sexuality, and more or less like confident in my body. Like there were times where I wasn't. Um, but I don't know that I've like firsthand experienced a lot of the like shameful stuff, like shameful experiences that like really imprinted on me. There's a way that I picked it up, because we're in this society and you hear things and your girlfriends share things and it's like, oh God, like I wouldn't want that to happen to me. So I had like
Yeah.
this background noise of neurosis happening. But but I think I just have always really been open to trying new things and like really it feels easy for me to like push my levels of comfort. Like I enjoy that. Like on my podcast I joke that I'm like a self-growth junkie. um, and just like love like kind of pushing edges of discomfort because I know that there's growth available there. And that's something that's really important to me. And I had started going to therapy when I was like 15. And so I've been in this space for like a really long time.
Hmm.
And known a lot about growth and about like, discomforts and triggers and different things like that. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but
Yeah, I think that it's like a perspective that, sometimes doing the thing that you're the most afraid of is where the magic happens. That's been my experience. The more I've done things I'm afraid of, the more I've grown and evolved and it's scary. And I think that it's just trusting. What it comes down to, in my opinion, is it's trusting yourself, trusting that no matter what happens, you're going to be able to have your back and figure it out and get through it. And and it takes doing that one time. It takes leaning in once and seeing that even if things don't go how you expected, that there is a growth piece at least. Sorry. We got puppy barking in the background. Nana, come here. Um, so that's my piece on it. So
Yeah,
the first, sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. I think also I've traditionally been a very just like rip the band-aid off kind of person, and like doing more like extreme things like what you were saying where it's like the discomfort and like you just do it and then you see what happens and it unfolds and it's really like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I made it up in my head, you know?
Yeah.
Like I did the yoni casting thing, which that feels like probably really extreme for some people, you know? And
Yeah.
then like I had at some point I was in an open relationship and like I entered that as the perspective of like the growth that was available.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, that's really extreme, Samantha, you know?
It's metal.
Yeah.
But I get it. I do the same shit.
Right.
Birds of a feather. What would you say to people? Because I'm sure you get this all the time. I mean, you've had some reels go like massively viral from sharing about like this process of people are like super skeptical. What do you say to those people?
I think, I mean, I have a very like love and light and like live and let live kind of
Yeah.
thing about me. And like if it's not for you, it's not for you. And maybe get off this side of the internet, you know? But yeah, I think I mean, whenever I have people, you know, with the reels that go and the comments that are a lot of it's like you need Jesus. And I'm like, okay, you know, like people who are on the internet are so interesting. Um, but I think the curiosity, those questions, like what are you doing? Like why? You know, I enjoy those questions more because it's at least it's curiosity
Curious. Yeah.
judgment, you know, and I really appreciate that. And I talk about that a lot on my podcast. And that being like what can really shift the world, I think, is just that one single shift is like shifting out of judgment and into curiosity. Like it seems so simple. Um, but yeah, I just tell them, it's not for everyone, like I said, and there's a lot of incredible healing available if you feel not even like is it in your comfort zone, but like is it on the edge of your comfort zone where you could like, yeah, I could see joining and maybe being uncomfortable a lot of the time that you're there, but that's been the conversation I've had with women in the workshops too, is like them feeling really uncomfortable being there and like having a lot of stuff come up. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't, one of the girls was sharing how, she's a little bit bigger than everyone that was there. And she had concerns about that. And like, she has these different shame from her, her history of life.
Yeah.
Um, and just how safe she felt with me and then with the other women who are there. And I feel very um protective of like the reverence of these experiences and like that it's a ceremony and it's an honoring, and I'm not like you have to be serious, like we laugh, but there's also just the sacredness of it, and it's not like a place for judgment or any of that. And she learned a lot. She's very new in her spiritual journey, which I was like, okay, girl,
Diving into the deep end. Let's go.
literally, yeah. Talk about being a rip the band-aid off person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really rewriting, and I think both of our work in general is this, and the pussy casting is one avenue in which we're reclaiming our body and we're treating our body like the sacred temple, and we're recognizing that our nakedness and our pussy itself isn't inherently sexual. It's so much more. It's creative. Our bodies, have swam in oceans and laughed till they cried and held each other, and there's so much beauty in that, like the amount of time that we're actually having sex is so small, and it can be so much more and so beautiful. But like, how do you disentangle these pieces and come back to the truth that your body is this temple, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, and also this opportunity to see other women in their temple and to honor their temple. Like, it's just incredible. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that whenever we did our thing together, that you had introduced the like the yoni gazing and like the temple and
mhm.
the pilgrimage, like being a pilgrim and being a temple and like going on a pilgrimage. And I was like, oh, that's so like what a novel concept, you know?
Yeah.
And just to see it, to see her in a different light and in an honoring, and it's so different than our culture. And
Yeah.
the same
And
thing with the bodies, like you were sharing. I love that teaching that you know, talk about. It's not inherently sexual. Like it's just a
yeah.
body.
Yeah, we've made it so sexual because it's like it's taboo. Like, if we just normalized, like, yes, bodies have sex and they're naked and there's all these other things, it wouldn't be such a objectifying space. Like, to me, we objectify something because it is really powerful, and we want to make it smaller. We want to objectify it. We want to make it something that we can handle and control. So that's why we objectify sexuality. That's why men objectify sexual women, because they can feel the
Hmm.
power there, and women objectify men as well. I don't want to um act like men are the problem here, but like, that's what's going on. It's like we all inherently can feel how powerful our creative life force erotic energy is, and so we want to make it small by objectifying it. And like, this is a place where it's like, let's reclaim it all. Let's like own all that power, but understand that it's ours and we get to channel it. And like, someone else's sexual energy isn't a threat to ours or to our power if we're empowered in our sexual energy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's like some of with the workshops that I host with the yoni casting, there's typically a lot of like, not a lot of, there's a portion of it where there's like the embodiment and the movement of it. Um, and that's what, you know, some of Bertini's teachings with the like sensual embodiment and
Yeah.
BPE and like reclamation, like you were speaking about, and the life force energy that's held within that like lower chakra.
Hello, lovers. Please bear with me for a brief interruption with a vulnerable share and offer from my heart. So, when I first began my journey with spiritual intimacy and sacred sexuality, all I could afford were books and free podcasts. I was just out of college in my early 20s and honestly very, very broke. And I'm so grateful for all the complimentary, kind words and affordable wisdom that have gotten me where I am today. Price shouldn't deter you from healing. It shouldn't deter you from living the life you love or from reclaiming the most powerful energy in your body. It's my belief that time and commitment are also very powerful investments, especially when you're just dipping your toes in the water. You'll know when it's time to make the bigger cash investments in your journey. But let's begin together today with free love from my heart to yours. As you've already discovered, this podcast is free and it includes so much life-changing wisdom, but I'd also love to guide you to some free offers that are on my website, including a downloadable sexual shadow work workbook and a pleasure positive meditation. Both of these resources are amazing places to start in integrating the tantric principles of expansion and liberation into your life. And you can access these at www.talktantratome.com/free or find a direct link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. And I think another big piece that is, again, a foundational piece of both of our work, and it's woven into the workshop, is this piece on sovereignty too. Like, being able to be responsible for yourself and trust yourself and know where your edge is and where your boundary is, and when it's time to push that edge to create more space for you to play, and when it's time to actually acknowledge that your edge is upholding a very strong boundary because you haven't said no in the past and you've been leaky and you've, not been able to communicate your needs or your desires or your no's. or even know what they are for yourself. I think so many of us as women, like we want to people please and we inherently want to, be accepted and make others happy, but in reality, like it's taken us so far away from our own truth. And my experience in the workshops and in both of our work is that it's like do what feels good for you. Like if you want to do the plaster on yourself, do the plaster on yourself. If you just want to watch and hang out and not do it this time and just be in the energy, do that. Like it's everything's a choice. And that feels really good, especially when we're raised in an environment where, we go to school and we really just do what the teacher says, and we go to work and we do what the boss says. And at home, we do what our parents say. And then we're thrust out into society and the world. And it's like, who do I look to now? And it's this coming back to, oh, I get to look inward. I get to actually trust myself.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that that's been a huge part of my own personal journey of like self-trust and realizing that I've like put my trust in others, and like what you were speaking about, it's the training in a way, or the conditioning or whatever you want to call it. But just that like, oh, maybe I do know what's best for me, or like always looking outward for like a workshop or a da 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 to like solve the problem, give me the answer. It's like, no, it's within you, and like going to different experiences like workshops and stuff help you facilitate that. But I think that there's this mindset shift that maybe needs to happen or has already happened around that, where it's like, okay, I'm going to like have this experience and then see what happens inwardly, and what do I need to do and how do I want to interact, and then it just translate for the rest of the other parts of your life.
Yeah. And empowering our sisters in that too. I think like being evidence of these pieces of sovereignty and being evidence of the release of shame is really, really healing too, to be. Yeah. Go
Yeah, I've
ahead.
I've gotten a lot of feedback around that, I guess, like just kind of being the permission for people, because I
Yeah.
think I am such a like like just be on the internet, like here's my naked body. And I mean, you're similar too, I'm sure you receive
Yeah.
stuff like that too, where it's just like, wow. And that's a thing I hear a lot too is, oh, that's awesome, like good for you, I could never. And I think that that is a really interesting conversation to have. And I've had several interesting conversations with women who say that, and I'm like, could we talk about that? Like, are you curious about why you can never? Or like, it's just really interesting to see. And like, because there's a difference, right? There's like seeing something and then being judgmental and like hating on it. And then there's seeing something and being like, oh, that's actually kind of cool, but not for me. And
Yeah.
that goes again with what you were talking about, where it is this self-trust, right? Like you do get to trust yourself, and like that maybe that is not for you. And also have curiosity of like, why? What is it that comes
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. What do you think it is? Why do you think women don't think that they can do this?
Mm, I mean, I think there's a lot of different um roads of conditioning that women get. And especially in our culture, I don't I had an episode where I was like, what's the problem? The church, and and I don't think that that's actually the problem, but I do think that like there's a lot of ways that organized religion holds a lot of shame, and fear and control, and using those different emotions to have control. And like you were saying earlier, where it's like we listen to our teachers and they say to do this, we listen to our parents, they say to do this, and all these different authority figures that we listen to, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes out of fear.
Hmm.
And when we're in fear, there's a way that it's like, oh, there's shame around getting in trouble, or
Yeah.
being shamed as a form of like um, reprimand or whatever, your parents or the law or the church or whatever. Um, and then there's that like really deep, like primal need to be in the community and
Hmm.
in the tribe. And so you don't want to do too many things that might get you kicked out of the tribe. even though we're like living in a different paradigm and in a different way of living, but that is still like very, very, it's, I mean, it's a part of our like lower brain functions, that you don't really have a whole lot of control over.
Yeah, you've got to like rewire that shit.
Yeah.
It's like there's some shadow work available.
Yeah, for
And it's
sure.
normal. Like it's
Hmm.
totally normal. It's how our species survived. We needed to be accepted by the tribe, otherwise we could literally die because we might be cast out and then vulnerable because we're alone, vulnerable to enemy tribes, vulnerable to the elements, the animals, all of that. And I mean, even there's places today where in the world where if you go too far out of the societal norms, then you will be stoned to death. Like today, like it's not even like this is,
Yeah.
and as a collective, we're feeling that too. So and to me, it's like, what better way to be a sacred rebel to that energy to help us all evolve than by doing the thing that's scary as fuck and creating our own tribe of women that are like, I'm gonna plaster my pussy about it. What now?
Yeah. And I think that
Um,
you bring up a good point about like community, right? Like maybe finding a different community that supports what you're doing and your choices and what feels good to you. Because I know that there's women who feel sort of trapped in the community or the family of origin, or like maybe even in if you're married in your marriage or
yeah.
your family, and like being cast out of that is really fucking scary, whether you're gonna die from it or not. But it's like if it's a death and there's grieving to happen there too, for sure.
Yeah, it's like we do all these things to survive, but we're gonna survive. Like all the earth has all of the basic needs, provides all of our basic needs, right? So it's like we're going to survive. It's time to thrive. How do you do that? Surround yourself with people that get you, that get it. And it is a little death. It is a little grief to let go of the relationships or the people that don't get it. And I don't even think that it needs to be fully releasing them, but just committing to yourself and committing to showing up in your authenticity and what's resonating with you. And maybe they're triggered by it because they don't feel like they have permission to be liberated yet, but you're creating evidence that it's possible. And that's a really powerful thing, to be the stand, to be the evidence in the ways that Sam here has gotten feedback for being.
Yeah, absolutely. um yeah, it's all really, really interesting and really powerful work, if
Yeah.
you can allow it to be.
Mm-hmm. What about, let's talk a little bit about like more about the sisterhood healing, like healing in relationship to other women, because I mean, even now, like I recognize this part of me that's very small, that's like, but used to be much bigger. That's like, oh, you could be my competition. Brittini can be my competition. All of
Yeah.
my friends, they're in similar lines of work. But instead of like building up a wall or putting each other down, it's this place of like, let's all create, something together. Brittini was actually at our pussy casting workshop last time and did the what was it? The shaping, I guess, of the
Yeah, she
casting.
was assisting with the
She was
procuring
assisting.
of the the
Um,
plaster.
and I feel like I just need to introduce Brittini. We talked about her so many times. Brittini is the founder of Big Pussy Energy. This episode is sponsored by BPE. Um, and she does sensual embodiment and all those things. But the point in bringing this in was just like, wow, what a beautiful place to be in, where there's vulnerability and heart and connection and this conscious decision to merge our skills to create, bigger things in the world. Like what we created that day couldn't have been done without each of us, and then also every woman in the room that brought her own unique energy and support. And I think that it's just a really cool dimension to be in, to choose, you
Yeah,
know?
I think there's something really powerful about women getting together. I mean, I've experienced this, and I lead breath work, and even like participating in breath work. I do it at home by myself, but like going in a group, it's like so much more like amplified.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think group energy is really interesting to look at. But then whenever you take it, I think, to what I would call the next level, where it's like only women, and I'm sure men experience the same thing in their men's circles, where there's a level of like vulnerability that's available. And like you were saying, I think you can fall on either side of the things, where it's like this cattiness that women often experience, and competition. And I mean, those are wounded places. And I think that if you can push up against that edge of like feeling discomfort around being with other women, that there's like really, really incredible healing available, because I mean, we're the healers, and
Yeah.
we're the mothers, and we're the nurturers. And so there's a lot of healing available if you allow that, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like I like this phrase in regards to relationships, and Andrew and I live by this, where it's like 1 + 1 = 3. We're two whole people, and then we create something bigger than ourselves. And I think when you have a group of women, it's like 1 + 1 + 1 = infinity. Like there's just so much potential in that, and in the result that's available, but also in the individual and what gets to be rewritten. Like I feel so grateful for the sisterhood that I have in my life now. Um, and I couldn't have gotten here if it weren't for this work and healing, like healing my relationship to my own femininity, and then being in a space where I can celebrate other women in their unique expression, and even begin to like learn from them and take on, some of their codes. And like seeing you in like motherhood and how you're like in your relationships, and like, and then also doing this work, it's like really fascinating to me and inspiring to me. And that's a choice. Like I chose that. I chose that path, but that wouldn't necessarily be how I would have felt, 6, 7 years ago. Um, but I chose it, and now it's like it's a lifestyle, and it's something that I feel all women get to have, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like it's like you were talking about self-responsibility and self-accountability and trusting yourself, and it being a choice. To I mean, everything's a choice, and that's a really interesting like way of living, I think, and like
Mhm.
transitioning from that like life is happening to you, and like kind of being a victim of circumstance, or oh, it's just the way life is, to like actually taking responsibility, and like, oh, I am in charge of what's going on in here in my experience, and like how can I shift, or what can I change? Like there's those
Yeah.
three choices on how you can react to any situation. It's like you can complain about it, you can accept it, or you can do something like change it.
Yeah.
And I love that. You know,
Yeah.
I try to do the two, not complain. Anything but complain is what I try to live by.
Yeah, it's like feel your feelings, feel it, be in it, get it out, and then rise above it. Find the silver lining, lean in,
Mm,
and trust. And again, like it's recognizing that we get to decide, like we can't choose every experience that happens to us, but we do get to choose our reaction to it, and we get to choose how we move forward from it. And it's our lives are co-creations with something bigger in my belief. And so um it's just recognizing that it's a dance, you know.
yeah.
Um is what else do we want to is there anything else we want to chat about on this today? Or what else are you wanting to bring in? Anything
I feel I feel pretty
complete
complete.
complete-ish? I feel like we got some
Complete.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Um Cool. Well, we should definitely share that we're going to be doing another pussy casting workshop in Austin. It's kind of like a mini retreat vibe. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
5 hour sort of experience.
Half day.
Shall we share the date for our next pussy casting workshop?
Yes.
Is that what we're calling it? Or do we call it something else?
We called it like pussy plaster. I think you called it pussy worship.
For pussy worship workshop, where we do pussy casting along with other activities for reclaiming all that you are spiritually, emotionally, physically, sexually.
Mm-hmm.
April 7th, 2024, the day before the eclipse in
Ooh.
Austin. Sam has let me know that Austin is in the path of totality. What does that mean?
I can put my glasses on. The path of totality is like, I know you probably experienced this eclipse where you can like look at it with the special sunglasses and like see it, but like the path of totality is where the moon is blocking the sun like completely. And so the experience here on Earth is like you actually have like the dusk and then it's dark as if it were nighttime for a few minutes. I forget how long this one is. And then it goes back into dawn. And as the moon moves out of the path, like directly blocking it. And I flew to like Michigan or something a few years ago to experience that, to be in the path of totality with like my family. And it was really cool. It was
Wow.
like kind of freaky, you know, to think about like if you didn't know what was happening and you saw it, you're like, oh my God, the world's ending, you know?
Yeah, what did people used to think in the olden days about
I
that?
don't know. I'm not sure.
So, what I'm hearing is it's worth flying to Austin
Hmm.
for that. And there's also going to be a pussy workshop the day before. So, it's like you get a little 2 for 1. You get the path of totality and you get pussy casting.
Yeah, spend a long
Um,
weekend in Austin.
and
That's
I'm
what I'll
sure
be
there'll
doing.
be, yeah, are there cool events happening? I'm sure there are with the
Oh
eclipse here that
yeah.
you know of.
I
Okay, sweet.
know of a couple of them. Yeah, there's like different like festivals and stuff and yeah.
So get your ticket for the pussy plaster and then reach out to us and we'll tell you about the eclipse information too.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the energy of the eclipse? Is there like a vibe that it brings?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like new into astrology and all that stuff and aligning with the moon and whatnot. I just know that the eclipse, the totality eclipse is really cool.
Yeah, I'm a novice at astrology myself. My little understanding is that it like really shakes things up. It's kind of like this like going into the darkness transformation. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know there's like, you know, like the words we use are really interesting to like pay attention to, like eclipse, like clipping. Like I'm doing like
Oh.
scissor motions here for people that are listening.
Yes, it's like letting
Like
go. It's like
clipping things. Mhm.
what can you clip away
Yeah.
intentionally? All
Yeah.
right. Let go of that shame around your body and sexuality.
Exactly. It's so perfect.
It's right on time. It would have been right on time anytime we chose, but this is what works for both of our busy schedules.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we'll put links for that as well or you can find information on purchasing tickets at talktantra2me.com/events, or just go to my website and click the events tab and you'll see it there. All right, kids. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
to the
you.
listeners. Thanks for opening yourself up to the idea of pussy casting and sacred sexuality and letting go of shame and
Mm.
sisterhood wounding. And with so much gratitude and love, have a sexy and spiritual day. And we'll catch you next week on Talk Tantra to Me. Ta-ta. Oops, just kidding. Still here. I have one last thing for y'all. I want to say that the internet is a really, really special place. It's why we're all here right now. And many of us, including me, wouldn't have discovered Tantra or sacred sexuality if it weren't for this nifty invention of the 20th century. And almost none of you would have found my work and my vision without it. I love the internet, and I deeply desire to expand beyond it, to experience more real life love, community, and connection. So I invite you to check out upcoming Tantra events at www.talktantra2me.com/events, or click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to give you a big squeeze in real life. Okay, now that's it. Ta-ta for real. Ta-ta.